Well, good evening and welcome to another one of our live streams. Tonight we have a very special live stream for everyone. We have Ms. Lauren Smith, who is the president of the Lubbock Educators Association, and we're going to be having a forum tonight, the two of us, talking about education issues here on the South Plains in the state of Texas. Ms. Smith, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. It's back to school season, and so just getting geared up for all of that has been a lot of fun this week.
And tell us about the Lubbock Educators Association. What is that organization?
So we represent over 1,200 members in Lubbock ISD and Friendship ISD, and we're an affiliate of the Texas State Teachers Association. So we advocate for our members and make sure that whatever their needs are, we try our best to represent them.
And is it, how large is the organization?
So for us, we have over 1,200 members here in Lubbock, and then we have members across the state of Texas because we are part of the Texas State Teachers Association and the National Educators Association, but here in our local area, 1,200 plus members.
Okay. And you are at what school?
I teach at Whiteside Elementary. This is the start of year 7 for me.
Wow. My wife is a public educator as well. She's in the math department, but she started out as a kindergarten teacher. I understand you're in the, is it called English or ELR?
Yes, I teach ELAR and social studies to second graders.
Okay.
Yes.
Now, I know that everybody is concerned right now when it comes to COVID. Tell me what you know as far as school starting and what the protocols are going to be and that sort of thing for starting back up.
So when we start back to school, there are lots of new procedures, new protocols. Parents, nobody outside of staff members and students will be allowed to enter the building except by appointment only. When students get here, there's spacing guidelines that they have to follow, so schools have been working all week to figure out what that's going to look like for each individual campus. And then in classrooms, desks have been spaced apart, tables have been manipulated or taken out, thinking about individual student supplies, disinfecting, hand sanitizing, built-in restroom breaks, a lot of things like that have been going on, just thinking about how we can keep kids healthy and safe and staff members healthy and safe, but also, keep learning continuing.
One of the things that I was critical of early on is I felt like the legislature needed to be called back for a special session. I know that Charles Perry wanted a special session to address how our liberties might be being infringed upon, but my concern when it came to a special session was addressing things like teacher safety and how to come back to school safely and how to do these kinds of things with the least amount of interruption and to do it as as hassle-free as possible. In terms of teacher safety, what can you tell us as far as that goes in terms of what's being done to protect our teachers?
So teachers have been, everybody in my district has been provided a mask to wear. So that's the first step is, wearing a mask. Are you talking about COVID safety? I just want to make sure.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
Yeah.
So every teacher has been provided with a mask. A lot of teachers were concerned about buying their own disinfectant and hand sanitizer, and so far that's been provided for us. And so those are the biggest things, and just the district has put out a lot of materials to help teachers think about, if you're sick or things like that, this is what you can do. This is your line of steps that you can take. And so them providing the PPE, I think, is a good first step. And then also, a lot of our meetings where we would meet as a whole staff have been virtual. So instead of everybody going into the library and meeting, we have been, as a district, it's happened district-wide, doing like virtual Google Meets and things like that. So that also keeps people safe. Now, when kids return, we're going to have to keep our masks on at all times, and students will be spaced out and all of that. So those are just some of the ways that our district's working to keep teachers safe.
Now, what about the hand sanitizers that are in hallways? Like, if you go on a cruise, they always have the hand sanitizers as soon as you come off the elevator or as soon as you come downstairs. And I know some of the office buildings here in Lubbock have done that as well. Will there be the hand sanitizer stations in the schools? Do you know anything about that?
So I know that most of the elementaries have hand sanitizers like right at the entrance of their door. But for those that don't, every teacher has been provided a spray bottle of hand sanitizer. And so it's portable, and the teacher is the one who touches it and does all that. And I also know that students are having their hands sanitized as they come to the building. And then between transitions, like if we leave the classroom, we're sanitizing hands. If we come back in the classroom, sanitizing hands. And so that spray bottle, in a sense, since it's portable, those places, but there's also hand sanitizer at most classroom entrances. I can't speak for the whole district because I know that it's situational, but I think pretty much everywhere has sanitizing available.
What about when it comes to the classrooms themselves? I know that I've heard some concern from teachers that teach the little ones, kindergarten, first grade, second grade, that sort of thing, saying that it's just going to be impossible for these kids to keep the face mask on. Can you tell us anything about that in terms of is it just one of these things where people are just going to have to learn to do it, or are there going to be other types of protocols in place to help with that? These little ones, you know how it is.
Yes. So one thing that our district has done is provided every student a mask that is for school. So say a kid doesn't come with one or something like that, there will be masks provided. So I think that's the first step, is having it available to them. The other part of that is I think it's part of creating a culture, because 10 and under are not required to wear their masks, but we're highly encouraging them. But our 4th and 5th graders and will be required to wear their masks, and so I think it's one of those things that I think it's just going to take lots of encouragement, and teachers are going to have to wear their masks at all times, and so hopefully students seeing that will help. I think it is going to be a change, and I think when kids get here, there's going to be some things that maybe we haven't thought about, and maybe there will be challenges with the mask. But I'm really glad that at least every student will have a mask available to them, because I think that's the first step. If you have a mask, you're more likely to wear a mask.
What about the teachers themselves? Are you hearing anything from the teachers in terms of concern that maybe a mask isn't enough, that they need, like, for instance, the plexiglass panels around their desk, those types of things? I know from my perspective, one of the things that the memory that I have of elementary school in particular is just that teacher that's smiling at you and letting you know that you're loved and giving you that positive affirmation and positive feedback. And, with a mask, you just can't do that. And so I would think that some of our teachers would be more interested in some type of a shield, like you see these doctors wear, but then of course they do want to wear the mask maybe with the shield. But I've seen some masks that have the see-through on the mask, that sort of thing. What are you hearing from teachers?
So, I've seen a lot of innovative teachers making their own, barriers and things like that to try and do what's best for their kids. Of course, that has not been an expectation of our district. Our district's first recommendation is, use what furniture you have and see if you can get 6 feet apart and all of that. And so a lot of teachers that are really concerned are getting innovative with making their own PVC pipe barriers and things like that. We are being told that we can wear face shields, but we must wear masks too. And so in that case, if people wanted to just wear the shield, that would not be, they can't do that because we were told we have to wear masks. I know that we were told for primary grades that they have ordered masks that are see-through so that when teachers are building those early school foundational social emotional relationships and things like that, that kids can see teachers talking. And so hopefully that'll help. We don't have those in yet as far as I know, but I think everybody is just trying to be really innovative and, think of creative things like, let's do air hugs or let's do air high fives or things like that, or let's bow to each other. And so I feel like hopefully with the strong culture of teachers, teachers are really resilient and they're going to find a way to connect to kids, and it may look different, but, I think that I hope that with some of the changes that, we can still help kids feel okay at school, and then those teachers that are uncomfortable, a lot of them are making barriers and things like that. So that's what I can say on that.
One of the questions that we had sent in before our live stream tonight is there's been some concern with students that attended certain campuses, but they weren't perhaps in that campus's geographic boundary, like maybe they lived outside of that particular campus boundary, or even maybe outside the district, but they were transfers in. You may not be able to speak to this, I don't know, but I'm hearing that there's some confusion when it comes to that as to whether or not you'll still be allowed to attend the school or if your child will still be allowed to attend the school that your child has been attending for the past few years if they were a transfer in at a certain campus. Do you know anything about that?
I don't know for sure, but I know in the past that if you have an approved transfer, then that should be honored, and I don't know why it wouldn't be unless there's some special situation with COVID that I'm not aware of. But I know in the past, if you have an approved transfer, that has been, honored. One
of the things that the legislature told us that they took care of was teacher pay. And now all of a sudden, we're looking at significant budget shortfalls due to COVID, due to the drop in oil prices, due to problems with the economy and collecting sales taxes on things, that sort of thing. What are you hearing when it comes to teacher pay, and will the raise that the teachers got previously, is that still going to be consistent? Is that raise still going to stay in place, or are we looking at teacher layoffs? What are we looking at?
So you're asking really good questions and things that we watch very closely as an association. It all depends on what the legislature decides to do next, whatever happens next, because right now those funds are there and those funds are set, but when the legislature meets again, they could decide for that not to be a priority as it was in this last legislative session. And, the raises were really great, but Texas is still really far behind in the rate of teacher pay. We were the 28th state, now we're the 26th, but we're still, behind. And one thing that happens is every year, the cost of living rises, and especially during this COVID pandemic, teachers are trying to survive as much as they can. And a lot of teachers, their families have lost their jobs, and so the teacher income is the one supporting their families. And so I think it's going to be really important to keep a close eye on what the conversations of the legislature and what they decide to do, because right now we don't know if this money that was given is going to be guaranteed in the future. And that's kind of a scary thought, because if there's no money, what happens? Most of the time it's not good for educators.
Right. One of the things that our family always encountered every single year when the new school year started, it seemed like my wife would find something, she'd find out something about her health care Either the cost of health care would go up and it'd eat up whatever raise she got, or she would be put on a new plan where the coverage would change. Sometimes it was great, sometimes not so great. Um, my position on these kinds of things is that we need to move away from an employer-based health plan that is based um, out of an industrial age from the 1920s, and we need to move in a new direction. But putting that aside, getting to where we're at right now, are you hearing anything when it comes to the healthcare plans as far as is LISD sticking with the plan that they have, or are they changing plans? Is the cost of it going to go up? Anything like that you can tell us?
So one thing that Lubbock ISD has done, they did give step increases this year. We were hoping for a larger raise, but one thing that they did is they kind of made a hard stand to help take care of insurance premium increases. And so Lubbock ISD has tried to stick firm to that and handle that so that the cost isn't put back on the educator. And so as of right now, I think that that's honorable, and I think that that's what needs to happen. And so I feel like Lubbock ISD maybe not be feeling that as much as other people across the state. But I hope that continues to be a priority, because healthcare is important. And if teachers only make so much, but healthcare insurance and premiums increase, that's going to be difficult. And so I applaud Lubbock ISD for thinking about healthcare premiums and trying to make a plan to support educators in that way.
One question I have, and this may be, if this question's out of bounds, just let me know. If it's something that you don't know anything about, or y'all's organization doesn't take a stand on it, just let me know. This is just something that I hear a lot of from people, and I don't really know how to answer them, because I really think that Lubbock does a good job with this, and that is some of these districts in other parts of the state that have built these huge, massive stadiums and just spent tons and tons of money, basically mortgaged their future for these stadiums. And a lot of people come to me and they say, well, we don't want, we're tired of these teachers getting all this money, because look at this. These districts are spending money on these big stadiums instead of spending it on teachers like they should. And so why should we be hit with the legislature giving teachers a raise whenever these districts are going and spending all this money on these stadiums? That's an argument that, to be honest with you, it kind of resonates with me some, except that I think people need to understand that right now you can borrow money for less than it costs to actually pay the loan back in many cases when it comes to these school districts borrowing money. And so I also understand the school district's perspective on that. But how does your organization respond whenever you hear that kind of complaint? Because I hear that complaint a lot.
Anytime we hear complaints, we speak to our members and we try and see if other people kind of feel the same way. We send out a lot of surveys throughout the year, and we share those with the school district. We also listen in on their conversations at budget hearings and committee hearings and things like that. And so that's really how we respond, is when we get information like that, we pass that on so that hopefully our school district can make an informed decision. And sometimes that happens and sometimes that doesn't, not just in Lubbock ISD, but across the state. And so that's what I can say on that.
Yeah, and it seems to me that one problem is that the way we fund public education in this state is we fund public education in a way that it sort of fosters some of this rivalry between places. And like I said, I think that LISD has really done an excellent job in that respect in not building the Taj Mahal of stadiums and that sort of thing. But I can also see where there's going to be that rivalry between other districts and stuff, and that desire to have the best facilities and that sort of thing. As far as I'm concerned, it just further speaks to the need to come up with a better way to fund public education so that we're not pitting all these districts against each other, both in terms of how they go about raising revenue and competing in terms of tax rates and sort of thing, and then also the way they go and spend that revenue. Let's also talk just about the way that the state of Texas treats teachers as a whole. You know, we have these ratings for school districts, we have testing. One of the things that I try to remind people of is whenever I go to my dentist doesn't have a big sign out front that says, 99% of my patients don't have cavities. Or I don't know, maybe my dentist might have a sign out front that says 30% of my patients don't have cavities. You don't measure dentist achievement in terms of the outcomes of that dentist patients. And yet that's what it seems like we do when it comes to measuring teachers and the performance of teachers. Can you speak to that?
The A through F rating system is really, really, really a hard thing because it is based off STAR test scores, which I'll remind people that is one test taken on one day. And if you ever worked, for people that have ever worked with students, you can have students that are so prepared for something, have an off day, and maybe it's the STAR test day, and it's a total bomb. And then that ends up reflecting schools and students. And another big problem I have with the A through F rating, and so does our association, is that when you have a school that has a big D or F out front, that almost labels the students. And, if we have students from low-income areas or kids with socioeconomic needs, then it almost is like stigmatizing those students and from where they come from, and then that stigmatizes the teachers to say these aren't good teachers because their school is a D. And so I just don't think that's the best way to go about, saying whether a school is quality or not quality, because grades are important. I get that, and I get that, data is important. But I also think at the end of the day, we have to think about all our students, and we have to think about how these A through F systems, kind of label them and kind of label, depending on what area of town you live in and what your situation is. And I think that's not the way that we should be doing it. And it's also, I just don't think it's the best way to do it because it labels students and teachers. And I think that this profession is already hard enough.
Are there any other types of systems that the TEA is advocating that might improve upon the rating system that's currently in use?
I'm not really sure on that answer. I hope that they're thinking of a new way to do this. But I just think that they really need to go back to the drawing board in some cases on how they rate schools and rate teachers. Because from my experience, I've worked with a lot of people in this district. My mom is a teacher. I see a lot of hardworking teachers that work hard for their students, and sometimes their campuses scores don't reflect all the great work that's going on. And I also think that, test scores don't measure the social emotional needs that teachers meet for students. And I also think that's an important part of education that sometimes gets forgotten because you can't measure that. But knowing about kids and how they feel about themselves and coming to school and how they feel about their lives, I think that's just as important as data on a test.
Yeah, I'm giving away my age here, but I'm old enough to remember when Mark White was governor, and Mark White brought in a lot of the reforms. I went to school at a time when we really didn't have a lot of accountability when it came to public education. I've told people before, I grew up attending an elementary school that is kind of like Parkway on Lubbock's east side, Lakewood Elementary School in Houston, and it doesn't exist anymore because it was one of the lowest performing schools in the entire Houston area. it was riddled with fraud and abuse and that sort of thing. And the school, they just decided to just go ahead and just bulldoze the school. And so I don't have an elementary school anymore that I can go back and visit and that sort of thing. Um, but my elementary school was one where, like I said, there just wasn't a lot of accountability back in those days. And so I understand and I appreciate the need for accountability, but it seems to me that the way to have accountability is to have it more on a local level. Um, Everybody wants good schools. Everybody, um, you know, I haven't seen any neighborhoods yet that say, you know what, we just don't care. Everybody wants good schools, and having that accountability there in the community, having systems set up within your local PTA organization, having systems set up even within the district in terms of, I know here in Lubbock we have different quadrants with how we address things and whatnot, but it just seems to me that the solution to this is to have local accountability and then have accountability higher up the food chain as well. So that, for instance, a district might be accountable higher up, but we don't need to go and publicize it and say, this district is better than another district, and then the district out in the suburbs is putting up big billboards talking about how great they are and everything compared to other places, and then like we see in Lubbock right now with the Lubbock Compact and this need to preserve and protect our inner city, particularly District 84. We have problems with that whenever it comes to the competitions between districts. It just seems to me like the way to relieve this problem, at least while keeping the accountability there, is to have more local accountability, have that accountability to the local taxpayers and to the local parents, and then have different steps in accountability that move on up the ladder, instead of what seems like is more of a statewide system where everybody's graded across the state the same, and just nothing about that system is fair, whether it be the income that the districts receive, or in some cases it's, in my job, I was working on a case a few weeks back where there was a district up in the far northern parts of the state where it's nothing but ranch land, and the teachers even live right there. They've got a parsonage for some of the teachers because it's so hard to get teachers up there. And so there's just all these issues when it comes into accountability that's just not fair whenever you grade teachers across the state the same way.
Well, and
Yeah.
thinking about what you're saying and processing, another thing that I think is super important is if the state of Texas is really going to meet their goals, they've got to properly fund public education. It is way past due, and at the end of the day, it's about students and the future of our country and our state. And I know that there's a lot of things that have to be considered when it comes to money, but I think education is one of the most worthy causes that funding from the state could go towards, because these kids are important and they matter, and they need quality support, and teachers also need to stop being beat up on based on reading scores that are based off STAR tests that may or may not be on appropriate reading levels for students. And so I think that we just have to continue fighting for proper funding of public education, because students should matter, and they do matter, and they're going to be our future leaders, and what we do today is going to affect them in the years to come.
Yeah, in fact, our founders of the state of Texas thought public education was so important, they even put it in the state constitution. So certainly, public education is an important part of the state of Texas. Not every state can say that they have a clause in their state constitution that guarantees public education, but Texas does, and it's an important part of being a citizen of the state of Texas.
Yes.
One other question we had, I believe it was a question sent in a few moments ago, and that was, or the question concerned student-teacher ratios and COVID, and how is student-teacher ratios, how is that being addressed? Are we adjusting student-teacher ratios due to COVID? I know I've seen some news reports about teachers not coming back and teachers taking early retirement, in other words, that sort of thing. And so then there's an increased need to bring in substitutes, and then also we've got issues with um, some students aren't doing the in classroom teaching; they're doing virtual and those sorts of things. And so everybody's kind of up in the air when it comes to teacher student classroom ratios. Do you know anything about that?
So I know that for kindergarten through fourth grade, there's a cap, and there's I can't remember the exact cap. There's caps for older grade levels, but it's 22 to 1. And, due to COVID, I know that depending on virtual students who opted for virtual school or not, like at my school, some grade levels have low numbers, some grade levels have closer to that, 20, 22 mark. And so I know that that's a problem and has been a problem, especially at high schools, where teachers have 36 kids and things like that. I haven't quite heard how the numbers have shaken out since all of this because the virtual, enrollment was changing last week, up until Wednesday. And so it's hard to know exactly for this year with COVID the numbers for teachers, but we are kind of keeping an eye on that because we want to make sure that, if we're going to do all these safety protocols, we're also keeping numbers and people in close contact as low as possible. And so I think our district is looking at that, and we're also going to, as an association, monitor that too. But I do know that, for example, right now I have 14, but that could change in 9 weeks. So it just depends on schools and their situation. So my numbers are lower than usual, but some kids chose virtual school. So.
Is there anything else that parents need to know about, or teachers, members of your organization should know about before we start up?
One thing I do want to say, and this is something we always try as an association when we see good things happening or efforts with the intention of good happening, we really try to think. I do want to thank Misty Reber and her team for Lubbock ISD because I feel like they were kind of ahead of the game when it came to really thinking about how to keep our teachers and students as safe as possible. And I know that Lubbock ISD has been providing a lot of support for teachers, with the content and stuff like that. I also had the privilege of doing summer jumpstart, summer school, and so I kind of got to do a trial run before that. And one thing I want parents to know is their kids are coming face to face. I know I've seen a lot of people post on things. I don't want my child to feel like school is a prison. The kids that I had that came here for summer school, they were so happy to be back, even with all the guidelines and all the changes and all the restrictions. And so I think that the influence of a teacher is invaluable. And I think that once we get into it, I'm hoping that, some of the anxiety is, calmed a little bit. Now, I definitely understand people having concerns and fears and all that. I totally respect that. But I just want parents to know teachers in Lubbock ISD are going to do their best job for their kids because we love our students in this district, and we love our jobs for the most. There's challenges and things like that, and I just want parents to know that we're going to do our best to make sure that your kids are safe and happy and learning, and also care about them as people. So, but that's just what I wanted to end on.
Well, actually, I apologize, but we had somebody send in another question, and if you got time, we'll keep on.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm assuming this is a teacher. Somebody wanted to know if LISD asked for input from the Lubbock Educators Association with regards to COVID protocols.
So we did get to sit on a reentry task force, and they shared their plans and things like that, and they asked for our feedback in the early stages. We also sent out a survey to our members, an anonymous survey, and all the results from that were shared with the district and district administration and their teams. And so those things hopefully were I feel like they were considered to some extent. But we did have some input, and when we didn't have input, we were able to share our concerns and things like that. Another thing is throughout the summer, we made a point to request to meet with the district administration every 3 weeks during the summer, because we knew that even though school ended in May, there was still going to be lots of things changing. And so that was another way for us to share, our problem solving solutions or things that we had heard. And so some of the things that we did suggest have been considered or implemented. And so, yes, yes, we did have some input in things.
Another question we've gotten is, what things other than teachers' pay would the Texas Educators Association like to see the legislature address in order to support our teachers?
I think that with all the things that are going on, behavior in the classroom is something that teachers, sometimes deal with, and sometimes it's really hard. And so I would like to see, some funding being allocated towards more counselors and SEL type projects. For those that don't know what SEL is, I've said that probably several times, that phrase. That's social emotional learning. I think that, academics are very, very important, but the mental well-being of our students is also really important. And so that's another thing that I would really like to see become a priority. And so teacher pay, behavior, social, emotional support, and listening to educators. That's what I would like the legislature to do. Listen to real teachers in the classroom, maybe go visit some teachers in their classrooms, because I don't think people always realize exactly what teachers do and how teachers perfect their craft and how they do incredible things with very limited amounts of funding and stuff like that.
Another question we've been asked is there any talk about a teacher's retirement system, about what's going to happen with that, about cost of living increases, that sort of thing?
I'm sure there are talks on that. I'm not as knowledgeable about that at this moment, but that's something that I could definitely follow up with my team and maybe get that information towards your team, Mr. Gibson. We're always kind of watching that, but our focus has kind of been all the COVID stuff, because that's not that teacher retirement isn't relevant, but right now in this moment, COVID is such a hot topic item. But that's something I could follow up with your team on from my team.
Yeah, you were talking a moment ago about teachers and the professionalism of teachers. My wife is one of those that as soon as COVID hit, all of a sudden she went from writing lesson plans that, or I say lesson plans, writing training materials for teachers that went from doing in-person training to all of a sudden having to rewrite all of these lessons and everything so that they were done virtually. And then over the summer, she spent an additional, she worked the entire summer working on how to do these kinds of things in a hybrid model. And I don't think that people really understand that being a teacher is not being a babysitter. There is professionalism to being a teacher. There are different learning methods when it comes to kids, and teachers have to know the different teaching styles and the different learning methods of kids, and how to address different kids' needs when it comes to those learning methods. So I really appreciate you spending some time with us. And is it okay if I call you Lauren?
Yeah, go ahead, go for it.
You called me Mr. Gibson, and I tell the people in my office, I tell my office staff, when they call me Mr. Gibson, I want to turn around and look for my dad. I mean, when you start talking about Mr. Gibson, that's what my dad's name is. But my name's John, and I appreciate so much you coming on and talking with us tonight, Lauren. And stay safe this school year. And we appreciate so much what you do and what all of our teachers do, and not just the teachers, but everybody up and down the line, from the cafeteria workers, the attendance clerks, our school district police, everybody who's out there making the classroom experience a smooth one. It's not just our teachers, there's a whole bunch of support personnel involved in that. And we appreciate you and all of those support people that take care of our little kids. So thank y'all. If you enjoyed this live stream, please click like and also share it. And we will be back every Sunday night to continue these live streams. Thank y'all very much.
Thank you so much, John.
Mm-hmm.